Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. AI is changing so fast it's hard to keep up. But no worries, today we're going to help you get a handle on one of the most fascinating areas, prompting language models. And not just the basics, we're going deep, exploring how to get these models to reason like never before.
Yeah, it really is amazing to think about where we started. Like, getting a language model to just write a decent sentence was a big deal, and now, well, we're talking about real problem solving.
It's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
So prompting, most of you probably know the idea. Give the model some instructions, maybe an example or two, just a little nudge in the right direction. But things get really wild when we start looking at how to actually teach these models to think. And a great place to start is something called chain of thought prompting, or COT for short. Have you heard of that?
Oh, absolutely. COT is all about breaking down a problem, step by step. Like you write out a recipe. You're basically showing the language model, hey, here's how you think it through one ingredient, then another, then mix them up.
Instead of just hitting the model with a super complicated question and hoping for the best, we're giving it this framework to tackle it logically.
Exactly. And it's honestly pretty amazing how well it works. There was this study with the LLM model. They just used 8 examples of this chain of thought prompting. And it ended up being crazy accurate on some really tough math word problems. Like, it was even better than some models that had way more training on those specific problems.
Only 8 examples. That's like, what, showing someone how to bake a cake a few times and then boom, they're suddenly a master chef. But, I'm curious, is this chain of thought, this linear way of thinking, always the best approach for prompting?
That's the catch, right? Not all problems are so neat and tidy. It's like if you try to summarize, say, a complex philosophical argument just using bullet points, you'd lose all the nuance, all the connections between ideas.
So if Carol's like a chain, what's the next step up? I don't know, a rope? Some crazy knot?
Well, actually, the next step is a tree of thoughts, or TOT. So instead of one straight path, now we're letting the model explore different possibilities, like branches on a tree, right? It can try something out, realize it's a dead end, back up, and then try a different branch.
So it's more like brainstorming, kind of. The model gets to try out a bunch of different ideas before picking the best solution.
Exactly. And that branching structure gives it way more flexibility, lets it refine its thinking. It's not stuck just following one line of reasoning.
That sounds way more powerful than just a chain. But I have to ask, are we at the top of the prompting mountain now, or is there something even more mind-blowing waiting for us?
Oh, there's definitely more. Get ready for this graph of thoughts, or GOT. Now we're thinking of the model's thought process like a network, all these nodes connected together, like you guessed it, a graph.
Okay, so now I'm picturing this giant web of ideas all linked up. But how does that actually work? How do we use it for prompting?
Think of it this way. With a graph, you can jump around between those nodes, revisit old thoughts, make connections that wouldn't be obvious in a linear structure. Even with a tree, it's like the model can suddenly make these big mental leaps from one idea to another just because it sees a connection that wasn't clear before.
So it's like it's having those aha moments that we humans get, those flashes of insight where we suddenly see how things are connected.
Exactly, and the results are really impressive. Gotcha has been shown to be much more accurate and efficient for tasks like sorting data, finding what's common between sets, even merging documents. There was this one study where Gotcha was actually 62% better at sorting than other prompting methods. And get this, it was also cheaper to run.
Wait, cheaper? I thought we were talking about like the cutting edge of AI here, not saving a few bucks.
Well, efficiency is important, right? Even with amazing AI, that's part of what makes Gotcha so cool. It's not just about getting the model to think better, it's about doing it in a smart, streamlined way, like finding the shortcut through the maze instead of trying every single path.
Okay, so chains, trees, graphs. I'm starting to feel like I need a degree in advanced botany to keep up with all this. But seriously, this Gati thing, it sounds incredible. Are we basically teaching language models to think like humans now?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? While Gati isn't a perfect replica of the human brain, it's definitely a huge step toward more human-like reasoning. The model can revisit thoughts, make connections, refine its understanding.
That actually sounds a lot like my own problem-solving process. I'm constantly going back and forth, connecting the dots, revising my thinking.
That's why Gati is so fascinating. It's not just a cool tech trick. It's really pushing the limits of what we thought language models could do, and it's making us rethink what it even means to think.
All right, so we've laid the groundwork here, Kati, the incredible power of Kati. But I have a feeling this is just the tip of the iceberg, right? Are there even more revolutionary prompting methods on the horizon?
You bet there are. And before we get into those, we need to talk about the big question, the one everyone's thinking about. Are these models really thinking, or are they just doing a really good job of mimicking thought?
Ah, the age-old debate, are we creating machines that think or machines that just act like they think? That's a whole other deep dive right there. But right now, I'm dying to hear about these other prompting methods you mentioned. What other crazy structures are researchers working on?
Well, to understand those, we need to kind of shift our perspective. What if, instead of trying to make these models think like humans, we actually embrace their own unique strengths?
Ooh, that's intriguing. So instead of chains, trees, and graphs, are we talking about like fractals, hyperspheres?
Hold on tight, because we're about to enter a whole new dimension of prompting. It's really fascinating to think about, how we can push these language models even further.
You're about to take us into this whole new world of prompting, like the stuff that goes beyond just trying to make models think like us.
Right. We've been talking about chains, trees, graphs. But what if we actually, tapped into the strengths of language models as language models?
Okay, I'm with you. Instead of forcing them to think like humans, we play to their strengths.
Exactly. Think about it. Language models, they're amazing at manipulating language, finding patterns, generating text. What if we use those abilities to create completely new prompting methods?
So instead of imposing our way of thinking, we let them do their thing, their language thing.
That's it. One way to think about it is, thinking of prompts like code, like a set of instructions that the model can use to do some really complex tasks.
It's like we're giving them a little programming language, but one that's specifically designed for messing with language. That's pretty wild.
Researchers are already doing this. They're creating these prompting languages that let you define variables, you can create loops, even define functions, all within the prompt itself.
Whoa, so the prompt becomes the program, and the language model is like the interpreter, right? That's a whole other level of control.
It is, and it opens up all these possibilities for tasks that involve logic, data manipulation. You could even use it for creative writing. Like,
Yeah.
imagine being able to define a function in your prompt that automatically generates different kinds of poetry, or a loop that analyzes data and finds insights.
That's like, I don't know, giving someone a cookbook versus teaching them how to cook from scratch. Suddenly they can make anything.
And here's where things get even cooler. These prompting languages, they don't have to be limited to just text. We can bring in other things like images or audio.
Multimodal prompting languages. Okay, now we're getting into science fiction territory. What would that even look like?
Imagine you give a language model a picture, right? And then a little bit of code that tells it how to analyze the image, pick out important features, and then use those to write a story.
So the prompt isn't just words anymore. It's this mix of text, image, code, all working together to guide the model. That's mind-blowing.
And we're just scratching the surface. I mean, what if we could even use music or sensory data in these prompting languages? The possibilities are crazy.
This is all so exciting, but it makes me wonder. We're talking about moving away from mimicking human thought, embracing the strengths of language models. But does that raise any concerns? It's like about control or unintended consequences?
Yeah, you're right to bring that up. As we give these models more powerful tools, we have to be even more careful about the ethical side of things.
Like making sure they're used for good, not for something harmful.
Exactly. Transparency, accountability, strong safety mechanisms, all that's going to be crucial as we keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
Okay, so we've gone from chains of thought to these incredible prompting languages. But in the end, what does it all mean for, the average person? How is this going to impact our lives?
Think about all the ways we already use language models. Search engines, virtual assistants, tools for creating content. Now imagine those tools becoming way more powerful, way more flexible.
So my virtual assistant's going to be able to, actually understand what I need, maybe even anticipate my requests, and help me do things in ways I can't even imagine right now.
That's just the beginning. Think about education. Imagine personalized learning, tailored to each student's needs and how they learn best.
Or healthcare. Language models that can analyze medical data, help with diagnoses, even come up with personalized treatment plans.
The possibilities are really huge. And as this technology gets even better, we're going to see even more amazing applications.
This is all very inspiring, but it brings up this question that's been kind of bugging me. We're making these language models so powerful, but are we also making them more human?
That's a big question. And it's one that, philosophers, AI researchers, they've been debating for a long time.
I mean, on the one hand, we're saying think like us with chains and graphs, but then we're also saying, no, forget that. Just use your own language powers. It's kind of confusing.
It is a paradox for sure. Are we trying to create machines in our image, or are we creating something totally new?
And if we do create something different, something that thinks in ways we don't even understand, what does that mean for us, for our relationship with technology, with intelligence? Whoa.
Right. It's something we really need to keep thinking about. But for now, I think it's worth just taking a moment to appreciate how far we've come.
Yeah, it is pretty amazing. Just a few years ago, we were amazed that language models could put together a basic sentence. Now we're talking about complex reasoning, these crazy prompting languages. It's wild.
It's remarkable. And it's only going to get more interesting from here.
All right, we've covered a lot of ground today, but before we wrap up, I have one more question for you.
Sure, go ahead.
We're prompting language models with images, audio, even sensory data. What's next? Emotions, dreams, consciousness. Is there even a limit to what we can prompt them with?
That's a question that should keep us all thinking long after this deep dive is over.
Wow, I feel like we just went through, the entire history of language models in, like an hour?
It's been quite a journey, hasn't it? I mean, from simple sentences to everything we've been talking about. The progress is just amazing.
Before we let you go, though, let's kind of sum things up for everyone listening. We started by looking at different ways to prompt language models, to actually make them reason, like those chains of thought, where you teach them to think step by step.
Right. And then those trees where they get to explore different options, like they're brainstorming. And then, of course, those incredible graphs of thought.
Yeah. And then we jumped into those prompting languages, right, where the prompt itself becomes this super powerful tool.
Exactly. Giving the language model instructions to manipulate text, create new text, all sorts of things.
And we even talked about bringing in pictures, sounds, maybe even other senses into those prompting languages. That just blows my mind.
It does make you wonder, what can't we do with these things?
Right. But beyond all the technical stuff, we also, we got into some pretty deep questions like, what is intelligence? What are the ethics of AI? What does it even mean to create a machine that can think?
Those are questions that we all need to be thinking about. It's not just about cool technology, it's about the future.
Exactly. So, okay, time for the big takeaway here. Why should anyone listening care about all this? It's fascinating, sure, but is it relevant to, to the real world?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, as language models become more sophisticated, they're going to be everywhere. They're going to change how we work, how we learn, how we communicate, everything.
So this isn't just about scientists in a lab somewhere. It's about the tools we'll use, the jobs we'll have, our whole way of life.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to understand how these models work, what they're capable of, and to think about the ethics of it all.
It's almost like we need a whole new kind of literacy. We need to become fluent in the language of AI.
That's a great way to put it. Just like reading and writing are essential today, understanding AI is going to be crucial in the future.
So if someone listening could take away just one thing from our deep dive today, what would you want it to be?
Don't be afraid to explore, to learn, to ask questions. The more we understand about AI, the better we'll be able to, to shape how it develops, how it's used.
And who knows, maybe someone listening right now will be the one to make the next big breakthrough in AI.
I hope so. It's an exciting field. So much potential.
Well, that about wraps it up for this deep dive. It's been a mind-blowing journey. We've seen these incredible prompting methods evolve, becoming more powerful, more sophisticated. But there's still so much out there to discover.
Absolutely. The future of prompting, it's wide open. Who knows what amazing things are just around the corner.
So everyone listening, thanks for joining us. Keep exploring, keep asking questions, keep diving deep. And hey, maybe we'll see you on the other side of that next breakthrough.
Until then, stay curious.